In the heart of the state-of-the-art, at the dawn of the next stage in entertainment, you found No Proscenium.
You have indeed found No Proscenium, the voice of everything immersive. I'm your host, Noah Nelson, and welcome to episode 440 of our ongoing exploration of the immersive cosmos. This week, we're joined by Cesar Hawas, producer of Particle Inc., House of Shattered Prisms, the spectacular creation of the Light Poets that has moved into the Luxor Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas and is wowing audience in this follow-up run to Particle Inc.'s fabled stay in Vegas's Arts District a couple of years back. All of that in a moment. Now, you'll notice this is a short episode. At least I'm assuming so because I haven't recorded the back matter yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to keep it pretty tight. Kind of short episode that normally we would book a double header into. And I could have this week, as I've had a few things in the can, but I want to do something else. And I want you to do something for me. Right now, while you are still settling in, I want you to open up your podcatcher and find yourself the Reality Escape Pod, where I'm the guest this week for host David Spira and PG Law. I'm pretty darn happy with how it turned out, and it makes a great doubleheader with this week's quicker episode of NoPro. And yes, it's a conversation between the three of us, although you also get the origin story of NoPro if for some reason you've never heard that. But we talk about plenty of other things. We even touch on a little Galactic Star Cruiser, and we didn't expect everyone was going to be talking about that when we recorded this a couple of months ago. So there you go. That's how releases work, you know? You work on things and then you put them out much later than you expect, and the timing gets all crazy. Speaking of room escape artist, if escape rooms are your bag, then check out the lineup for RECON, the Reality Escape Convention, which is coming to LA this August. You'll find the link in the show notes right after the Reality Escape Pod link. That's also where you'll find the link to sign up for the Immersive Experience Institute newsletter, which is where all the news about this coming January's Next Stage Immersive Summit, which is happening the 17th through the 19th at the Pasadena Playhouse in Pasadena, California. Get on the newsletter, get the news as it is announced, and mark your calendars now for the next great gathering of the immersive creative community. And now, as of this recording, we have finally hit the magical 450 backer mark on the Patreon here at No Proscenium. Yes, we don't have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of backers. We've got 450 of you, and we are so grateful. Let's do the roll call on who tipped us over. Beatty Gojan, Lindsay Stussy, Eric Gorinsky, Marcel Jackworth, and Mayu. Those are all new members. I also want to give a big thank you to Vance Garrett, Caroline Andrew, and Jerome Kipper for reactivating and in one case, even upping your pledge. And thanks to all those folks, there will be no shilling of the Patreon here on the podcast for the entire month of June. And you know what? We're going to throw in a bonus week. We'll start the day before with next week's show. The curse has been lifted. Now, I'll still shout out new backers and the sustaining backers, but I won't be doing more than that, even if we get a really successful episode. And it's like, why didn't you then? It's like, I want to take a break. I really do. It's going to be good for my soul. It's going to be good for your ears. However, for now, if you want to help us pad this lead, head over to patreon.com/NoProscenium. Not only do backers get the newsletter and access to our Discord, but they also get early access and discounts to our events and the knowledge that if I had big YouTuber money, our review crew would get paid and I'd be handling artist grants out left and right because all we want is to see more and better work everywhere. As always, big thanks to our sustaining backers Samuel Mustry, Chris Woolman, Samantha Davison, Eric Shamlin, Elaine, Daryl, John Boulette, Cameo Wood, Tom Wilson, Jay Bushman, Jerome Joseph Gentis, Kurt Collins, Ryan, David Bassick, Richard Ayers, Lonnie Hands-On, Lecker LeCool, The Ministry of Peculiarities, and Jan Budman. And hey, if you're a maker and you want to do something cool for this community, hit me up at noah@noproscenium.com and we can make out. Whoa there. Hey, I am not that cheap of a date. We can make a cool deal for the backers. Holler at me via email. Do not expect me to make out with you. All right. On that note, that accidental note that is staying in because I don't feel like editing it out, even though I have a bunch of other editing I got to do. Let's get into this week's interview, and then I'll talk to you for about 5 minutes on the back end. Returning with us now is Cesar Hawas, producer of Particle Ink, House of Shattered Prisms in Las Vegas, to talk with us about this new stand of Particle Ink, which opened recently at the Luxor Hotel and Casino, a follow-up to the crowd-pleasing run in Vegas's Arts District back in 2022. Cesar, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Last time we talked, you and I was on the show deck of Particle Ink's Speed of Dark, and a lot has happened since then. But before we get into all of that, for those listening now who weren't listening then, what is Particle Ink?
That's a great question. So Particle Ink is a narratively based immersive experience. It combines live performance with projection mapping, interactive technology like augmented reality, and loads of like cool little, immersive-y, surprisingly magical tech bits. I think that about sums it up.
That checks all the boxes. I was just listening back to the top of that, the actual interview on the deck, and it had happened maybe like on an hour after I'd seen the show. And like, you can hear how giddy I am because of just, you mentioned magical. I want to tell everybody, like, what you guys make is really magical, and it's been fun for me. I haven't got a chance to check it out yet, this new edition, for all kinds of reasons. But a bunch of my friends have. Todd Martins of the LA Times, a couple of our contributors at NoPro, some other creators I know who had not gone to see what was in the Arts District. And it is so fun getting to see this new edition through their eyes, because they're getting to have the exact same experience I did, which was like, oh my God, they've brought animated characters to life to connect with like human performers. It's like, what if Roger Rabbit was real in a lot of ways.
No, if I could, I would take it even a step further. We have not only brought in animated characters to interact with and react to live performers, but also the audience, right? And make that connection to the audience, which I think is probably the most magical feat that comes out of the Particle Ink experience, is that you're really feeling moved. You're rooting for, and in some instances, rooting against characters that do not breathe air and are made entirely out of light.
The Luxor is a pretty big jump up from a warehouse in Las Vegas's Arts District. And Las Vegas's Arts District is pretty cool. I don't want to knock it. Like there's a lot of good stuff going on up there, but this is a huge jump. What's the story here? I imagine this is going to take a hot minute to break the from the warehouse to the Luxor story.
Well, I think it starts back. I think we kind of talked about this the last time that we chatted, but really this story begins at the Sundance Festival in 2017, where the Light Poets, who were the brilliant minds behind the Particle Ink experience, as designers, directors, storytellers, technicians, created this small one-room experience that the CEOs of Kaleido, which is now the parent company of Particle Inc., where Jennifer Tuft and Cassandra Rosenthal discovered this piece of work with the intention of actually opening it up in New York City in 2020, September of 2020. And I think that story kind of tells itself there.
That part does, yeah.
And so, um, the reason I bring that up is there was a lot of legwork that was actually done. We were inches away from loading in that production into a relatively large space in New York City, and um, really had to rework and rethink not just what that experience could be, but how do we rethink the approach based off of how do we sort of create a uh, I don't want to say like sort of predetermined experience, but it's not so easy as just like finding a building and making a bunch of animations around stuff, right? You really need to be able to um, use those animations in as many different physical settings as you possibly can. So the work in downtown Las Vegas in the Arts District was really about putting the thoughts that we'd been marinating on over the couple of years during the pandemic of like how do you make as modular an experience as possible that can be really responsive to the variety of real estate opportunities that may come up in the wake of the pandemic. And so, in many ways, in most ways actually, the downtown run was really just a proof of concept, not just for how do we piece this together in a way that can make sense. I feel like if we can crush it in a just sort of wide open warehouse space, we can probably make it work in most other spaces. So, but does the story that we're trying to tell in a sort of nonlinear but still kind of beginning, middle, and end way, does it still make sense? Does it still resonate with people? And so it was just as much a proof of concept of the sort of function of the storytelling and the way in which we wanted to tell the story, as it was being able to show something to partners that we had been talking to around the world, of bringing this in. And as is the case with many immersive experiences, you kind of don't get it until you're standing in the room actually experiencing it. So,
Yeah.
the luxury that we had was that by doing it in Las Vegas, is that Vegas is a great destination for people. It wasn't terribly difficult to get people from around the world to come and check it out. What was great is that it registered on the cultural barometer. We won the Thea Award for Best Immersive Experience, and that was really exciting, given that our intention was really just to see if this thing even worked. Does anybody even care outside of our core group of folks putting it together? And then MGM saw it, and we immediately began looking for space. And for us, this the idea of uh, this black onyx pyramid in the desert with a light beam shooting out the top of it, with a wedding chapel inside that had gone unused for a period of time, became the sort of perfect narrative container for bringing the world of Particle Inc. and the place where the veil between our world and the 2.5th dimension would be revealed. It made so much sense. And then we worked on it for about a year, of like how are we going to actually like modify the speed of dark experience into something that worked with multiple rooms to explore different sizes of spaces, and then yeah and then put it all together.
As you're working on the modifications, one part of it's the room, but I also have to imagine the audience, potential audience in the Luxor is fairly different from the crowd that's going to come down to the arts district. It's sort of famously in Vegas, like the strip crowd is the strip crowd, and then there's like the locals and the real weirdos who like step off the strip. Um, has some of the show modified with that in mind as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things there. You never really know. what you have in immersive experiences, and I've been doing this a while, to know that you don't really know what you've got until you actually put an audience in the middle of it, and have them wander around and poke around and sort of see what their instincts are. And sort of what became immediately obvious to us, and is something that we're working through even now, is that as you move people through the space, how is it a comfortable and pleasant experience for as many people as possible, while still having focal points happening in every direction of every scene. And so I think the what remains intact is the story that we're telling. I think there's a darker side to the piece downtown that we've maybe lightened up and made a little bit more accessible, but that's not by way of carving out the intention of anything, but maybe just more of the sort of explicit references uh,
Mm.
that existed before. But largely, the story is exactly the same. An artist finds a book, his paintbrush becomes enchanted, and he brings to life all of his paintings, the jubilant, beautiful ones, as well as the ones that are made from grief and darkness, and his battle to overcome that, told in a sort of nostalgic fantasia of light and ink. And so the audience, we feel very strongly that this is a universal story, right? And that the audience um, will latch onto the narrative. I think what is interesting is that folks don't. Vegas has plenty of immersive stuff. There's not much that's been done though in terms of like watching a live show in a truly like ambulatory experience. And so, you know, educating an audience up front, and throughout the experience of how to engage without sort of overstepping as the creators, is I think one of the biggest challenges that comes out of sort of adapting from downtown to the strip. People just never seen anything like it, right?
Yeah. Well, and I gotta imagine, when you guys did the first one, we were maybe like, a year and a half into, you know, immersive for the layman meaning, oh, like I'll go watch a bunch of slides like in a warehouse
Hmm.
of like an old master's art,
Yeah.
and be like cool. And what you had was something very different. Now there's been a whole lot more of that. Like that, there was a whole boom and bust cycle
Hmm.
around those. I know you're well aware. Um, has that Are audiences coming to some degree with like that in mind? Is that what you're finding, that they're like, oh, am I just going to sit around and like watch some stuff on the wall and then kind of be like shocked and surprised that they're getting to move around, they're getting to interact?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We're so early on in the process that it's a little hard to tell
Mm.
exactly what people are expecting as they've shown up. I think the there is a there's a density of options to choose from an entertainment perspective on the strip, the likes of which I've never even remotely come near trying to um, you know grab people's attention and pull them in our direction. And so what we really spend a lot of time talking in the sort of post-mortem of opening, and as we sort of move into sort of letting the experience really gel, is um, what are the words to give people ahead of time to sort of set an expectation without ruining the magical surprise of an autonomously driven experience. If you remember, there's a lot of the experience was still tracked in a way. There's the sort of first act of the experience is largely happening in a relatively small amount of space. The final act is set in a relatively specific, space, and in between you kind of get to move around a little bit as you like. But I think with audiences having, at best, many of them, the only time that a live performer in an immersive experience has ever presented themselves to, to this audience, is like, in a haunted house. And the rules of that are quite well known, and you're generally just sort of moving in one direction. And so there's there's a whole new exciting like world of, okay, how do we quickly educate an audience as to what their role is here, and how do we manage them throughout the experience, drawing their attention to the right kinds of moments without making assumptions about what they may find interesting, as a sort of collective, as well as each individual audience member.
Are you guys happy with the solutions you've stumbled upon here, or shaped up? Stumbled upon makes it seem like you're just throwing things at the wall, but like this is an iterative process.
Yeah, it is an iterative process. And what we do on the Kaleido side is largely tech driven, the place where entertainment and tech meet. And usually the process with tech is, you do something, you play it, you reiterate, and you do that over and over and over and over until you get it right. Obviously, that as a method, uh, isn't the most practical of choices in live experiences. There are far too many moving pieces, humans, physical production to think about. And so a lot of this is not about sort of reiterating to the point that we're losing the thing that was initially there, but just trying to, sort of, what are the places that we can ease the friction points for the audience. And there's been some like really delightful discoveries in that, and some really, there's the inevitable nicks and bruises of sort of trying things out that don't quite work. But the great thing about having a team of folks that are both, personally, emotionally invested in trying to get this all right, is that, the audience tells you, we're very perceptive, right? The audience kind of tells you pretty quickly what does and doesn't work. And so, I don't think the team have been particularly precious about being like, okay, yeah, that, what, this doesn't work. Let's abandon that concept and just like, keep going. So, there's definitely been surprises. Surprises, I think, more in the way of like, I would have bet my bottom dollar that, the audience would have gone a different direction there. And so, yeah, it's really about like, you do have to do a lot of ego checking. Things that you are absolutely certain would make sense don't always. And sort of also being able to trust the process a little bit, um, that the sort of best moments will gel, and the ones that don't quite work sort of naturally fall by the wayside. And I think there's usually, in the end, pretty unanimous agreement on all the folks involved on what works and what doesn't.
When someone goes to the site right now to buy a ticket, I think this is still true. I haven't looked. I haven't looked today. They're presented with the option for like the show and then also the Wanderlust experience.
Yeah.
What? First, I want to know what's the differentiation between the two for those who are like, maybe looking at the site and going like, well, what does that mean? And then I want to ask about, how that came about. But first, what's the differentiation?
Yeah. So the difference is, that at night, we get the performer interaction with the experience. Um, in the daytime, for the Wanderlust experience, it's really like truly a choose your own adventure through the space. It's being able to sort of consume the physical world of particle ink. And one of the really fun ways is, through an AR app that we've been developing. And like, how do you sort of give another layer to the story without, making the fact that there aren't performers in the space feel like, a negative experience, right? We don't want anyone coming in feeling like shortchanged on that. And so we've got an app that basically becomes a sort of narrative scavenger hunt through the space. And that's been really fun and challenging in some maybe more controlled ways than like a performer based iterative process would look and feel like. But yeah, it's really exciting. There's a small amount of gamification to it. There's there's even an NFT integration into it. If you're one of our NFT holders, finding your digital NFT show up in that experience is also like something that we're really excited to bring to life. Uh, but yeah, for the most part, it's a sort of it's wanderlust. It sort of says what it is. It's just a self guided tour through the space. How we got to that was, the having it's sort of, I think, one of the biggest challenges of immersive experiences is, how do you make a space as available to folks as an immersive experience, as a narratively driven experience, without performers being able to be there in as many hours of the day as you would like to operate. We theater is like the the one business in the world in which you're really only generally operating like while there's performers uh, and audience together in one space. And there's a finite amount of time that can even remotely become realistically possible. And so for us, it was like, well, how can we make it available to folks that may only be in town for a couple of days and have, that they're seeing a headliner and only have one other option. And how do we make ourselves as accessible to folks? How do we make immersive experiences as accessible to folks that might not otherwise just be able to engage with the space, as well as for families? It's a great way to sort of, what do you do in the early part of the day in Las Vegas when you've got kids and you want to be in the space? You want something to do that's like accessible and exciting and interesting. And so that's sort of where we came up with Wanderlust.
I also have to imagine it functions as a nice teaser for the live show as well. Are you seeing people check it out during the day and then come back around for the
We have seen a
performance
little
first?
bit of that.
Yeah.
We've only opened up Wanderlust for like the last week or so. So
Mm.
we're still like, it's still a bit early. We did a little bit of testing and then paused it for to be able to have some more time during the day to keep rehearsing the nighttime experience, and only opened that back up last week. So ideally, yes. Hopefully, yes. It is a nice amuse bouche to the nighttime experience. But in theory, we want them to both be able to live on their own, so that if you only experienced one, you're still walking away with a very satisfying experience. But if you are able to catch two, that there's not like a sort of redundancy in that. And there's a sort of more whimsical play that's associated with the daytime experience versus the nighttime, which is, while very interactive, still quite sort of voyeuristic in what that experience is.
When I saw that this split was happening, that there was like the day and the night version of it, I actually got really excited because it felt like, oh, they've hit what the model needs to be for when an immersive experience has a dedicated venue,
Mm-hmm.
is trying to do a long stand. This idea of, hey, the space is there, we've built the space is compelling on its own, come in at a lower price point than like a full show, but then the show's also happening, recontextualizing the space, and just hopefully becomes the legs, both of them supporting each other, just keep a run going longer,
Yeah.
because otherwise the space would be dark. It
Mm-hmm.
you look at what's going on with Life and Trust right now, and they've got like the cafe open, and it was open first to like the financial district crowd in New York.
Hmm.
And then, I mean, they're not drawing a lot of money on coffee, I imagine. Or maybe
Hmm.
if they do suddenly, like, oh, we're shutting down the show, we've got a very successful cafe, send the actors away. But that feels like, that feels also, because people are looking for, you know, a place to go, to gather, to like
Hmm.
do something communally together. The space still gets to be enchanted, as a, and that's something that people seem to need even more post pandemic, and probably part of the reason why everyone was so excited at first to go out to those shows where they watched projections, because they were just with people again for the first time.
Hmm.
So yeah, I was very happy to see y'all doing that. It felt really smart.
Yeah, well,
So
we're really, it's you know, doing doing figuring out the operations of, how do you have a daytime sort of self-guided experience that then transitions very quickly into, a live performance, has plenty of challenges, but we've got an amazing team on the ground in Las Vegas that are so dedicated to figuring this out. And it's like it's a funny thing when you're moving into a market that doesn't have a sort of saturation or many precedents. There's not there's a lot of people that both work in Las Vegas and visit Las Vegas that don't have other big experiences like a Sleep No More as a point of reference, and so you really are starting from scratch with both audience members, but also with you know managers and front of house staff and performers, and you really do have to paint this picture every step of the way. And it's really not until all the pieces like come together that everyone really truly understands, like, oh, this is what I'm working on. Like, and so and there's really, and it's really, it's sort of the blessing and the curse of it is that everyone does get it, but you're really not pulling all those pieces until it's like go time, right? And so
yeah,
suddenly you've got everyone that's engaged with like, oh, okay, now that we know what we're doing here, we can do this and we could do that and we can make this better. And so it's a really exciting time, even though we're sort of still technically in our sort of soft launch phase. We've got, like everyone's really engaged, right? Like everyone's like, oh, well, why don't we try like this kind of prop for this particular moment. And it's not necessarily like a prop master making those kinds of suggestions. It could be like anyone in the space.
oh, fun. That's the best time, in a creative process, is when the whole team is gelled and aimed in the right direction, and you start getting all the creative juices bubbling from all the sides. So
Yeah.
yeah, sounds like guys, good time for you guys to be in at the moment. So
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah,
fun.
we're getting there.
Yeah. Well, Caesar, I'm hoping for a nice long run here for you guys,
Thank you.
because the show as I know it is really spectacular, and I think it's going to go a long way to opening a lot of people's eyes, to what the potential is here. I know there's a couple other folks who've written on it, who've recently seen it, who feel the same way. So it seems like the magic is working. And yeah, I just want to thank you for spending some time with me again today.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure as always.
Once again, I want to thank Caesar for being our guest on the show this week. Check the show notes for the links to Particle Ink. And if you are going to be anywhere near Vegas or passing through, or just go. Just go to that show. Uh it's it's something special. It really is. from what everyone's told me and based on my prior experience. That's like little asterisks there. I'm 100% certain that it's going to be so close to what I've already experienced. And so I can give a hearty endorsement, a perspective endorsement. And, look, Katrina liked it, Martine liked it, Todd Martins liked it, our friends from the Wild Optimists liked it, and I'm not talking about the previous version, I'm talking about this version. So I feel comfortable. Endorsing something I haven't seen for once in my life. It's actually a really good feeling, to like trust something. To be able to direct people towards joy. That is why we exist, right? Because if it was just about the cash, honestly, it was just about the cash. Getting people angry on the internet makes you way more money than trying to help people be happy on the internet. So it's a mugs game what I'm doing in so many ways. Speaking of unhappy things on the internet, yes, uh, I know about the Jenny Nicholson Star Cruiser video. I've actually watched about the first hour and 15 minutes. I got past up through the point where she started reviewing the room, and then I, as a lot of you know, have a very busy world, and then uh, that is definitely feels like a work category of thing. So I have to like slot it in between the others. I expect I'm going to finish watching it over this weekend in a couple of more chunks. But look, from what I can tell, she had a spectacularly like uniquely bad run. I'm getting bits and pieces from everyone about what happened. And I'll say, when it comes to the analysis of the marketing, very, very, very savvy, spot on analysis of the marketing, to the point where you can kind of see also kind of what her expectations were, like a lot of focus on it being a hotel at the start of it, which probably shaped her perception of what it was she was going into, which is incredibly fair game. And, perception is like 9/10 of reality. So if you go in expecting, something, your expectations set your perceptions set your reality. So I'm actually really interested to get through it. I know it's been incredibly contentious, and it's been very interesting to see folks who are in the immersive community who didn't go but watch it and kind of get very hyped on her take, and then folks who have gone and who either have or haven't watched it get really anxious or really upset about her take. But also, uh, folks who are outside of the community just kind of like fighting with people who have been to the thing. And I've also had some back channel conversations with folks who've like watched the whole thing, who did go, who are also fairly upset about it. So I have enough bummer things in my life. I mean, to be perfectly honest, like why I didn't like jump in and watch a 4 hour long, YouTuber video over the weekend. And I know, it's very thorough. Like that's the YouTuber essayist thing. Their thing is about being very thorough. In my life, I've gotten through one long YouTuber essay, and that was H Bomber Guy's long essay about other YouTuber essayists and how they were full of shit. So like I got through that one. Um uh and there was also another one, a really long one. I think it was about NFTs and Bored Apes. So look, I've done a few. I usually don't watch ones that are like about things that I know about, because then it's just like, what did I know about, And as we all know, I really enjoyed my time on Star Cruiser, but it's gonna be like this kind of, it's a curio to me, but also it's kind of become the definitive take because a lot of people don't have any other opinion or haven't been exposed to any other opinion. And so because of that, yeah, I'll have to watch it to kind of know like what's going on in there and whatnot. So maybe there'll be some rambly thing on the podcast next week, or like as a bonus episode thing in the middle of next week once I finally finish doing it, you watching it. But in the interim, I got to make the newsletter. You know, it's Memorial Day weekend. I've got friends to see, and there's a big premium live event for wrestling, which I've gotten back into after 20 years of being clean from wrestling. I'm watching wrestling again. How did that happen? Oh, right. The worst case of seasonal depression I've ever had, but because of reasons. There you go. And you know what? It makes me feel better. So I watched the wrestling. Okay. There, I said 5 minutes. I gave you 10. But yes, I'm well aware, and I'm taking it seriously, but also, trying to keep as open of a mind and a heart as I can. And it really does sound like she had like an awful time, and I don't wish that on anybody. So I mean, why would you want someone to have a bad time at a thing that you loved, right? Like, why would you? So there's that. Let's see how I feel when it's all said and done. Okay. Hey, we'll be back next week with our Neotropolis episode. So there you go. That's going to be great. We got both the founder of Neotropolis, and we've got like an all-star panel talking about their experience at Neotropolis on 2 different segments. Originally, I thought that was going to be the Memorial Day weekend episode. Then I forgot which weekend Memorial Day was. I pride myself on my calendar skills, so things are off when I don't remember when a holiday is happening, right? I'm an event producer. Okay, I'll get it out of your hair. I love you. The associate producer of this podcast is Parker Sella. Music for No Proscenium is by Chris Porter of the Speakeasy Society and Solar the Podcast. Special thanks to Siobhan O'Loughlin, and congratulations on premiering your movie, for voicing our intro. This podcast is written, edited, hosted, produced, mixed, and summoned from beyond the beyond. No. Everything here is my fault. I'm Noah Nelson, and until next time, I'll see you at the show.